All right. Good morning, everybody. It's a crazy day. It's the 24th of April, and there's so much going on, and I just want to kind of talk through things here. So we're doing another live on the commute. As a reminder that whenever I am doing these on the commute, it means that I am effectively talking about things I remember off the top of my head, and therefore there is the chance that I may get something wrong, especially since, again, I have to do this entirely from memory without having any notes or anything to reference. Also, I'll be talking a lot of opinion today because there's a lot to have opinions on. I'll just put it that way. So, good morning. Welcome to the stream. I don't expect anybody's here just yet, but when you do, pipe in and let me know that you're here so that I can give you a wave here. I probably won't be able to read it, but I'll at least know you're in here. The biggest news is there's two biggest news right off the top of my head here. First is that the Trump administration has provided basically their peace framework, their plan for peace, and in it gives Russia everything they want and Ukraine nothing they want. That's basically that Ukraine gives up the four regions and renounces all claim on Crimea. They give up the entirety of those regions. That also says that there's no NATO period, no chance of it, no way, no how, and it also says that effectively it's just. It also says, of all things, that the U.S. takes ownership of the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant and then gets into an energy partnership with Russia to provide energy to both Russia and Ukraine. Which, oh, come on, people. I mean, it's clear at this point in time that the Trump administration is basically trying to prod Zelensky into giving up straight out. They want to divide Ukraine up and divide the spoils between Russia and the United States. It's also saying that they insist on this minerals deal, which has changed formats more times than I've changed socks, and each time they've tried to make it even worse for Ukraine. So basically, that's the long story short. And President Zelensky responded to this not with fiery rhetoric or anything like that. Zelensky responded to this by stating that it's not in my power. Our Constitution does not allow me to cede territory. And on top of that, here is the Trump administration statement from 2018 about how Crimea is part of Ukraine and that the U.S. cannot recognize that changing at all. On top of that, in order for the U.S. to change this policy, they'd have to have an act of Congress. And while there's a ton of jokes you could make about that, it would require an act of Congress to recognize these other territories. In other words, a formalized treaty. So let's just say it's unworkable at best, deliberately provocative to Ukraine at worst. And of course, the moment that Zelensky put out those statements, President Trump absolutely went off the rails, saying that it's all Zelensky's fault, that the peace process isn't moving forward, that statements like these make it so much harder to negotiate. The thing is that they're not asking Putin to give up anything, nothing at all. There is nothing in these negotiations where Russia's saying, "Oh, we're giving up something." No. They're saying, "Oh, we want our maximum position," and the Trump administration is offering it. It's that simple. So, moving along from that, in that vein, the Trump administration has said there will be no more military cooperation with Ukraine at all. And shockingly, after the statements were released, the very next night, that'll be last night, Russia sent everything, every ballistic missile, everything they could send at Ukraine, all at the same time. And they're targeting cities across Ukraine, but in particular, I'm hearing about Kyiv in particular. So one of the things that was noted is that residential buildings have collapsed, that there are residential buildings on fire, that civilians are dying in quantity here. They've said that these attacks are not targeted at military infrastructure, but they are targeted at the cities as a whole. And an interesting statement I saw came out of Ukraine on this, and that was that these attacks had happened without the usual warning. Now, there's a bunch of ways you can take that, and I'm going to maybe talk about a couple. But the biggest one that and this, by the way, I have to state, is speculation on my part. But it sounds like the moment Zelensky said, I can't recognize this, Trump said, no intel sharing. And at that moment, Russia sent everything they had because the U.S. was no longer sending intel. Again, this is speculation on my part. I do not have that actually in proven writing. But the timeline works, and that's the unfortunate piece there. So I could be entirely wrong on this aspect, where it sounds like the U.S. cut off Ukraine and Russia immediately launched attacks and Ukraine is suffering the most for it because they didn't have the warning that they were coming. This puts all of those deaths, if true, this puts all of those deaths squarely at Trump's feet. If it's not true, if it's just plain Russia has managed to figure out enough gaps and holes that they can finally attack directly. In fact, I've heard about a new tactic. Then all of them lay squarely at Putin's feet. But the timing, let's just say the timing is suspect. So overall, we're looking at a whole lot of no pressure on Russia, all the pressure on Ukraine. Europe has said and been very clear about this. No, this is not working for us. We cannot do this. And there's been talk about setting up a replacement for NATO in Europe, a European-centric and only defensive alliance that would take the place of NATO in Europe. And I know some people are going to be saying, well, good, we shouldn't be in NATO anyway, and let's get rid of this. But understand what it's causing across the repercussions that are occurring across the world because of this. Also, I'm going through probably a bad coverage area, so I might disconnect and reconnect a few times, so you know. Anyway, the repercussions are extensive at this point. Over in, of course, obviously we already know about the Red Sea and the Houthis. The U.S. is actually investing a little bit in that, and there is, but it sounds like the U.S. has backed off the idea of attacking Iran, not because of anything specific, but because we're chickens. And they try and make it sound high and noble, but when you see the administration people saying that, oh, there's no way we could successfully pull this off. We can't do this. We can't win this. You know they've lost their nerve. They don't believe in America anymore. They don't believe in the promise of America anymore. And that's where things start to go awry. You see, over in India, with the JD Vance, by the way, there's a hilarious joke going around, and by hilarious, I do not mean in the funny way, but in the that's weird way. About J.D. Vance visited the Pope, and the next day the Pope died. Then he went over to India, and the next day Pakistan and India started ramping up for war. So I don't know if Vance has just got the magic touch of making everything he touches turn to poop, but it sure feels that way right now. Anyway, continuing on, there is word that Pakistan and India are currently about 3 seconds from going into blows there. Both of them are nuclear armed. There was a segment of Pakistanis that the Indians told had to get out of the country. There's something about expired visas, effectively. So I don't know the details on it. It was just something I caught just really quick. But each and every time, it's just escalating. And it's escalating because there's nobody putting the brakes on anymore. America used to be the brakes. That doesn't mean we were perfect at it. But we haven't had a world war for 80 years because America was finding ways to get that steam let off without it. Now there's nobody doing that role. Nobody's got the check valve. So India and Pakistan are just about at each other's throats. They've been historical enemies anyway, so it's not terribly a surprise. But it's getting worse, so much worse. And of course, China is continuing to escalate in the trade war with the U.S. Remember that this is one that Donald Trump chose, and the administration keeps let's just say, inconsistent messaging. The administration has inconsistent messaging. So what happens when anybody opens their mouth is all of a sudden the markets take a dip or the markets take a jump. It's market manipulation in obvious fashion right here. Or as I would say it differently, it's corruption. And every time Trump opens his mouth, it causes panic or havoc or soaring markets. And there are people that are taking advantage of it. People with insider knowledge. So Taiwan looks like it might be the next hotspot and going soon and quickly. But that's been a hotspot for a while. We'll have to watch because China looks like they might be just about ready to pull the trigger. If they don't do it during the Trump administration, I will be shocked. But the U.S. is losing face all across the world. Europe's cutting America out, and is being cut out of a lot of deals now. The fact is that our currency is weakening at the moment, and somebody said, well, that's great news. And no, it's not great news. It means that our buying power, the paychecks that you and I get are being literally destroyed. I can't buy as much with my dollar bill as I could just 3 weeks ago. That's not necessarily a surprise. I mean, they try and keep inflation to a roughly 2% figure. I have thoughts on that, but I am not an economist. And they have literally devalued the money in your pocket. Having a savings account today is less valuable than just a month ago, and even way less valuable than 3 months ago. And don't get me started on the tremendous losses on the stock market. Trillions of dollars in value has literally disappeared. But that's just how things are. In the end, the situation in Ukraine remains effectively the same as ever under the Trump administration. Donald Trump continues to try to find ways to make money off the situation. But when somebody actually offers him effectively money, when, like, for instance, Zelensky said, hey, we got $50 billion that we can buy Patriot missiles with. It came from Europe. We've got that cash on. We just want you to sell us them. Donald Trump literally went on a tear against Zelensky. And now it just really comes down to whoever is working the Ukraine war policy in the White House is not a friend of the United States. You take your pick on who you believe that really is. But I can tell you, it's not Donald Trump. He's being manipulated. And that doesn't mean I think Donald Trump is a righteous, good dude. It just means that he's doing what somebody else is feeding into his ear. And it's not a good thing. Anyway, that's everything for today. I am definitely going through some rough coverage areas. I have no clue how this is going to look on the final. But thank you very much for joining me today. You have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you on the next video.